Welcome to Brewers Daily. I'm your host, Dave Gasper. Lots to get to on the show today, as apparently trade rumors are heating up for Freddy Peralta. According to Hector Gomez, Freddy Peralta is emerging as the most desirable trade asset in the market. And, this is not exactly surprising. He also mentioned in his report, Hector Gomez, that, there are several teams involved. No one knew, really. He mentioned the Mets, Giants, Yankees, Red Sox, Orioles, and others. So all the named teams we had before from the winter meetings. And he says, Peralta would fit perfectly into their starting rotations. Let's be clear, Freddy Peralta would fit perfectly into every starting rotation. He would fit perfectly into all 30 of them. Okay? His $8 million payroll, his $8 million salary, the way he performs, he would fit in every rotation. Okay? So that doesn't exactly narrow anyone down. It doesn't exactly take anyone out of Freddy Peralta's market. But we still have the same named teams here on Freddy Peralta. But the fact that he is emerging as the most desirable one, now that can speak to a couple of different things. Number one, I think that speaks to the openness that the Brewers have to potentially dealing Freddy Peralta. They're going to listen. Obviously, they're not making really any outbound calls on Freddie. They're not exactly looking to deal him, but they are going to be willing to listen. They are willing to hear offers and talk about it. So there is that reality that the Brewers are willing to listen. They're not making them off limits. They're not being like, no, not really engaging with that. The fact that he is continuing to emerge here as the top candidate on the trade market speaks to the interest that the Brewers have in some of the offers that they're receiving, their interest in potentially taking one of those offers, and simply that all these other teams have so much interest in him, and the reality that he could actually end up going versus, say, a Tarek Skubal, who would also be incredibly desirable out on the trade market. Every single other team would want him, and even though he'd have a high price point, at least for this year, it's only 1 year of team control, similar to Freddie. Now, the contract that Skubal is going to demand, it's going to be very substantial. And in terms of the price point, that teams are going to have to give up in terms of prospects in order to make a trade happen, they're going to want to ensure that they can sign that guy long term if they're going to do that. But also, the Tigers haven't exactly been super willing to trade Tarek Skubal because they believe, hey, our window is now with this group, and Skubal's a major reason why. So trading him doesn't exactly help them achieve their ultimate goal. The Brewers, you could argue the same thing. Trading Freddy Peralta may not necessarily help them achieve their ultimate goal. Being a year away, they may be better off just having him in their rotation, pitching every single fifth day. But the Brewers have had this willingness in the past to trade guys who are a year away from free agency. They have kind of a system for it. And so the fact that they have that willingness means he's emerging as that kind of a, most desirable target over someone like Tarek Skubal, who you could very easily argue is a much better pitcher than Freddy Peralta. I don't think anyone's going to deny that Skubal's a better pitcher than Freddy Peralta. I'm not going to deny that Skubal's a better pitcher than Freddy Peralta. But the fact that Freddie's emerging as a top guy out there, that means that there is a real willingness on the Brewers' part to listen and to engage in these trade conversations. So those things are still continuing to happen. We have not seen any, front runners. We have not seen anyone get, eliminated. We have not seen any reports of who could be coming back in return. But, in terms of, the front runners, in terms of who are the teams out there now, again, we have the known teams, the Mets, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Orioles, the Giants, among, several others. But we have the 5 named ones there, 2 in New York, Boston, Baltimore, and San Francisco. So who could be the favorites here in order to get something done? Of these teams that we know of that are heavily involved in his market, there are 2 contenders to me that really stick out. I think there are 2 true legitimate threats to actually land Freddy Peralta in terms of what they have available and what the Brewers may be interested in for a Freddy Peralta return. So I think the two big threats for Freddy Peralta are going to be the New York Mets and the Boston Red Sox. Now, this is not of any inside intel, but this is based on what the Brewers have done in the past, what they look for in these kinds of trades, what their needs are, and what these other teams have. So I think with what the Mets have a lot of young starting pitching that's controllable, that the Brewers could tap into and acquire guys like Brandon Sproat and Jonah Tong. Nolan McLean, I'm sure, would hold interest. But reports are McLean is off the table in trade talks with David Stearns out there, so can kind of forget about that. But still, someone like Sproat or Tong could be of serious interest to the Milwaukee Brewers. Luis Angel Acuna is another guy who could be on the move that I think could make some sense for the Brewers if they wanted to grab him. Maybe throw in a lesser third piece that could potentially get a deal done. Again, if the Mets are willing to do that, but I think that's something that the Brewers would look at and say, I think that's a good value in return for Freddy Peralta if they can get that. Boston Red Sox, similarly, the Brewers made a trade this past year with the Boston Red Sox in order to get one of their young pitchers, Quinn Priester. And they've got plenty more over there down in Boston. I mean, they're adding these guys to the rotation. I mean, they added Sonny Gray. They're trying to get some of these top tier guys. They got Crochet over there as well. But they have several young starters, with some with major league experience, some that are in AAA. That these guys are on the 40-man roster, and they have some MLB experience, some don't, but they are all between 23 and 26 years old. They've got largely the full complement of team control, and there's a lot the Brewers could choose from. They could simply pick from that group who they like the best and try and put in that trade for Freddy Peralta. So, of their starting pitchers there, Peyton Toll, Connolly Early, David Sandlin, Tyler Uberstein, Shane Drohan, Johan Oviedo. I mean, they just acquired Johan Oviedo, so he's currently listed on their AAA roster, but I'd imagine they're going to try and find a way to get him in the major. So, Oviedo, we can skip over him. But Kyle Harrison, Hunter Dobbins as well. So Harrison, Dobbins, Drohan, Uberstein, Sandlin, Early, Toll. I mean, that is 7 guys right there that easily the Brewers could pick from, and the Red Sox would be like, you know what? Fine, take them. Because they've simply got that ability with their rotation, what they currently have, and especially if they're adding Freddy Peralta to it. So I think with that, the Brewers can kind of structure a deal around one of those top pitchers that they got. Toll and Connolly Early may be the ones that hold the most appeal. I mean, they're the most highly rated prospects. They both made their MLB debut last year, and they're both left-handed. So I think that's something that could certainly draw the Brewers' interest if the Red Sox were to offer players like that in a trade for Freddy Peralta. So, and then I think you can add a second player from there. Who exactly? I don't know from this group, but I think if you have that really kind of strong MLB ready starting pitcher that the Brewers can have a full complement of team control with, I think that's something that the Brewers would very easily be interested in and can work a deal around, especially when these guys are at that, 23, 24 years of age. That they like working with those types of guys. They got Quinn Priester from the Red Sox back in April, and that worked out incredibly well for them. So, maybe they want to go to that well one more time and see who they can pull, because the Red Sox have kind of figured out their pitching development in recent years. So now they're kind of starting to see some of that come to fruition. And the Brewers, they know pitching development pretty well. And if they can see that these guys are going to be having some success, I think that's a spot that they could very easily go to. So I think the Red Sox could absolutely make a ton of sense for a Freddy Peralta trade. So that's an area I think we could be looking at. The Red Sox, the New York Mets, I think are two teams that are the two top contenders at the moment for Freddy Peralta, just in terms of what they have available to trade and what could be of interest to the Brewers. Again, we haven't seen any reported names being thrown about in these conversations. Just that Freddy Peralta is involved, and all these other teams are looking at it. So I think those are two teams to really kind of get familiar with and look at if you're a Brewers fan wanting to see where Freddy Peralta might end up going, because the way that these rumors are happening, the way they're continuing to talk, and the way this is seemingly going, there's a very real possibility that Freddy Peralta does end up moving this offseason. I still think, it would make a lot of sense to keep him, but if there's this much interest and teams are willing to pay the price in order to get him and overpay to get Freddy Peralta, if you're Matt Arnold, you almost have to do it at some point here. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on here over the coming days to see how hot these rumors really get as we lead into Christmas. I'm not convinced that this will happen before Christmas. Now, I know I've talked about how, okay, some of these deals that have been moving along, they're going to want to get these things done before Christmas if they can. But I don't think the Brewers are necessarily in any rush to get a Freddy Peralta trade done here as soon as possible. I think they'd be more than willing to take that into January. You remember with Corbin Burnes, they took it to February 1st before they finally traded him. So, there's a lot more that can still happen here, and we'll see how much the market is truly held up by this too, because we saw at the winter meetings, a lot of the free agent market was kind of held up by the trade market. All these teams are wanting to make trades and make moves that way, and that's holding up the rest of the free agent market. Well, if everyone here looking for starting pitching is being held up by Freddy Peralta, that starting pitching market could be waiting a while to ultimately end up moving. We could see how long this goes. Maybe someone will just simply step forward and make it happen sooner and just make a great offer and make an overpay offer in order to just get it across the finish line, so that the rest of this can just simply so the dam can simply be burst and everyone else can move along with the rest of their offseason. So I think the two top contenders, again, the Red Sox and the Mets, are two teams that I think line up very well on paper as trade partners for the Brewers with Freddy Peralta. Switching gears now to free agency for the Brewers, just to kind of get towards the end here. Brewers still potentially looking for a backup catcher that could make some sense for them. And honestly, I think the one that might make the most sense is Eric Haase. I don't know if Eric Haase would want to re-sign with the Brewers, given how he was kind of treated last year when he was doing just fine as a backup catcher. And then they got Danny Jansen and DFA'd Haase. And then I think he ended up back in AAA, and now he's a free agent. But still, maybe he's someone who is like, hey, you get him in to kind of be the backup again until Caro is ready if you want to, or, if you want to go with Caro right away, you can stash Haase in AAA potentially, depending on what kind of deal he signed to. So I think that's someone that could make a lot of sense because the Brewers liked him. Pat Murphy liked him. He was pretty productive in his limited playing time. He knows the pitching staff already pretty well. So I think that could certainly help him and help his case. If the Brewers want to look for an additional catcher, that could make some sense because, again, they still only have two on the 40-man roster. In all likelihood, they're going to try and get themselves a third on that 40-man before we get into spring training. So who that might be is up in the air. But Eric Haase, familiar name, could be one that makes a ton of sense. And speaking of spring training, we found out a couple more names that are going to be there in spring training on minor league deals, of course. But the Brewers signed right-hand reliever Gerson Garabito to a minor league deal with an invite to spring camp. And they also signed pitcher Drew Rom to a minor league deal with an invite to spring camp. Both these guys, really kind of nothing spectacular in terms of their MLB careers. Garabito pitched a little bit with the Rangers last year, and then he ended up going to Korea. Drew Rom, he had an ERA over 8 in his limited big league exposure. So, again, not great track records there, but perhaps the Brewers can get them into the pitching lab, make some tweaks, and in all likelihood, these guys are going to be in Nashville to start the year. And if they do well, then maybe they can earn themselves a promotion throughout the season. But they're going to get themselves a chance to prove themselves at camp in front of the Brewers coaching staff, and we'll see what they end up doing. But Gerson Garabito and Drew Rom joining the Brewers organizations and that Brewers organization, and that was the transactions that they made here. So just kind of some minor moves there, just a little bit of housekeeping. But you see these NRIs, these non-roster invites, start to stack up throughout the offseason here. So we'll keep you updated again. As these Freddy Peralta rumors will be continuing here, but with him emerging as a top trade candidate here in the market. That is quite the development. The market is very strong for Freddy Peralta, so there's going to be a lot of teams vying for contention for him. But again, the Red Sox and the Mets may be the two best positioned organizations to land Freddy Peralta in terms of what they have to offer the Milwaukee Brewers. So we'll keep tabs on that, and we'll have updates for you whenever they come here every single day on Brewers Daily. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, get notified every single time a new episode drops, and follow me on Twitter as well at dgasper24. Lots of great Brewers content on there as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for enjoying it. This has been Brewers Daily.